Jump into it. I really appreciate you all being here tonight. My name is Adam Sparks. I'm the co-founder of Short Answer. If you're not familiar with Short Answer, we help through 12th grade students write better together through social writing activities for any subject. And an approach that is central to our work and has been central to our work from day one is peer feedback. And since the release of AI, we've been thinking through, well, how can we augment peer feedback with AI feedback? And so it was through that approach that I found the amazing people that are on this panel with me tonight, that I really appreciate them joining. So we're joined tonight by Lisa Sperber. Lisa, you want to like wave as I introduce you all, by Lisa Sperber and Carl Whithaus at the University of California, Davis, and by Anna Mills at the College of Marin. These are three amazing researchers on a research team developing something called PAIRR. That's an acronym to PAIRR. So PAIRR combines structured peer review with guided AI feedback, and it positions AI as a tool to be critically assessed within a socially grounded writing process. The team's research is supported by an AI Grand Challenge grant from the California Education Learning Lab. So we're super excited to be joined by you all tonight, and welcome, welcome. Before we get into it, I always forget to share this. So hold on, let me share my screen. Because we do webinars on a quarterly basis, and we try to always do them at the intersection of writing instruction and AI, because that's the world that we live in. So if this is your first short answer webinar, what I would strongly encourage you to do is check out our previous webinars after this, because we've done some really good ones. So we did one with Dr. Dylan William on the like how do we adjust K-12 instruction and specifically assessment in a world where AI can do a lot of tasks for students. We did one with the Writing Revolution team, which is an amazing writing pedagogy and framework. We did one with Leon Furs and Dr. Mike Perkins on their AI assessment scale work in writing assessment. And we've done some with Edge Protocols, which is an amazing K-12 pedagogy organization that we've partnered with. So if this is your first short answer webinar, check out the previous webinars, which this one will be a part of, okay? And I'll share resources to get on our mailing list so that you can learn more about our webinars going forward. But I'm going to stop sharing. I just wanted to shamelessly plug that first before we get into it. But anyway, I'm sorry to do it. Anna, Lisa, Carl, welcome. It's nice to have you. How are you all doing this evening?
Thank you. It's very exciting to be here. I'm excited for the informal conversation with you.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Absolutely. And Carl and I have both been involved with the writing project in our area. So we love working with K-12 folks.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, tonight will be kind of a blending of I'm bringing the K-12 land and experience. I taught English and social studies for 7 years and now developing a K-12 ed tech tool. You all are coming from the higher ed world, but hopefully we can find common ground and
Oh, yeah.
meaning for both. Okay, I'm going to jump into it. I've got my list of questions, but again, I hope the more we can make this conversational, the better. And for folks that are here live, if you want to put questions in the QA or in the chat, I'm going to do my best to monitor that as we go. And I think the more we can make this a dialogue and the less it's just us like being sages on the stage talking at you all, I think the more productive it'll be. But I guess my first question is like, before we get into the nuts and bolts of what is PAIR and how does it work and what might it look like in a classroom is like, where did it come from? What problem in writing instruction were you all trying to solve when PAIR was originally conceived? And I guess I'll ask that of Lisa and Carl first.
Yeah. So I can start us off. Um, well, when ChatGPT first dropped, we were sort of as a writing program trying to figure out what to do with it. And we didn't want to come from a policing perspective. We knew in the beginning that we wanted to try to work with our students and build AI literacy with them. So we all practice peer review in our program. We were actually looking at using AI to support different moments in the writing process. We were kind of experimenting with it. And we were noticing that peer and AI feedback actually had a lot of similarities early on, that students were reporting that there were similarities there. And we thought, well, this is really an area that could be useful, not only in our classes where we, all we focus on is writing, we, structure writing processes and peer review really carefully, but also in courses across the curriculum where people might have less training in writing pedagogy, less practice in that. So yeah, so that's really what got us interested. Carl?
Yeah, well, and I would just add, so we developed PAIR here at UC Davis in 23, 24, tested it out with classes ranging from like our entry-level writing developmental classes, first year composition, to large upper division like science lecture classes that are what are called writing experience courses where you have, 300 students in a class with a bunch of TAs. Some of those were online courses, so a lot of different environments. But then the next step in PAIR was we applied to the California Education Learning Lab, which is run out of the governor's office here in California for a grand AI grant. And that project actually involves us working with 8 different colleges in California. So 4 community colleges, 3 of the Cal States, and students at UC Davis. And there we're working with 70 faculty this year, crossed all those different campuses in a variety of different classes. In fact, even some creative writing classes. So we're trying to use this technique of using AI feedback and peer feedback, letting students think through those in a variety of different contexts. And so it's this initial idea that Lisa described, but now it's the how do you work on this in a bunch of different environments with a bunch of different types of students. And I think we're really beginning to think through like what would be the implications of using a pair model in the secondary type of English classroom writing environment.
You
Gotcha.
know, there's one other thing I wanted to add on when I'm thinking about this. We were in the beginning, our campus were getting, there was a lot of advertisement for ed tech tools coming in too. And we were also concerned about humans getting cut out of the feedback process, that being an attractive alternative for, it's cheaper, it's a lot less labor, and we know that writing is a social activity, writing is communication, and that's how we wanted to keep that with students. So that was one of the main reasons that we said, okay, we already know peer review is the best practice, like you all do at Short Answer. We were coming from that place. How about building on what we already know about best practices? Because we were also concerned with how much of a race there was to use AI. And we wanted to make sure that that was grounded in learning theory, in practices and theories that we, as a field of writing studies, that we know work. And I'll say one other thing, which is just that, historically, um, tech interventions into education don't always not only work, but we wanted to support all students. That those tech interventions don't always close equity gaps; they can even widen them. So we wanted to. That was like another reason it was very important for us to know that the practice was sort of rooted in good pedagogy.
100%. Yeah. We're going to come back to a lot of what you just talked about. I was, as an ed tech developer, I spend a lot of time at ed tech conferences, and I've seen a lot of presentations of features that worry me. And maybe we'll come back to some of those features if we get a chance, because
Yeah,
it's very tempting and easy to create the tool that you upload 125 papers, you press a button, and boop, we got the grades and the feedback, and we're done.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that
Teachers don't even have to look at it.
exactly.
Mm.
So that's partly what I love about what you all are developing, which leads naturally into the next question, which is how does it work? So can you walk us through pair, and maybe we'll start with Anna. But again, everybody feel free to jump in. Like walk us through pair. Like if a teacher were to observe a class that was using this approach, what would they actually see students doing?
We have a bit of a sequence. So before we invite students to engage with feedback, we want to lay some groundwork with some AI literacy readings that we've curated. So just short readings, because we want that foundation of um, knowledge, understanding that AI is not a guru, it's not an oracle, it's not authoritative. We want to help build these habits of skepticism in relation to AI. And part of that is understanding what is the nature of these systems, understanding that they can fabricate things, that they can get things wrong, they can be biased, understanding some of the ethical concerns related to them. So the students are making their own choice about whether or not to engage with AI feedback, really emphasizing the student's agency in relation to AI. educating them a little bit about that as a first step, maybe having some discussions about those readings and videos. And next, they would be doing peer review. However, the teacher is going to do that, whether it's an online class or an in-person class. So we're not taking that away. We're emphasizing that, having that come first. And then they would reflect on AI feedback that's shaped by, the instructor has set up before by putting in their assignment and rubric and choosing one of our two types of feedback. So they've set it up so when the student goes in, they're just pasting in their draft and they can see our feedback prompt if they want. Otherwise, they can just view the feedback. And then they're reflecting on it. And I guess I'd say the first step of that reflection is chatting back, asking questions or asking for additional or different kinds of feedback. They're sort of practicing iterative prompting in that process. And we're providing some scaffolding, so some suggestions for ways to chat back that could help them get more out of the feedback in their writing process and help them be more aware of their needs in their writing process and more confident in asking for what they want and in questioning maybe something about the AI feedback. And then they write a brief reflection, comparing the peer feedback to the AI feedback, reflecting on what's actually useful to them, what resonates, what doesn't, what they might do with this in revision. Then they go away and they revise on their own. And when they submit their final draft, they're also doing a little revision reflection where they decide, where they say at that point, looking back, what was actually useful in the feedback. Did they take something from the AI feedback, from the peer feedback? What actually helped them? So again, kind of increasing that metacognitive reflection on their writing process, and looking at AI feedback as one piece of a human-centered process.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So just I want to make sure I summarize it for just practically here. So and jump in and tell me if I'm wrong. So students do a reading on AI in some capacity, on many different facets of it. And I think there's some agency teachers kind of get to choose the reading within that. And you all have a list that we will share out of these resources that folks can pull from. So we do the reading, then we do the writing, right? Now, is that writing about the reading or is it about something entirely different? Lisa's saying no.
It can be whatever writing assignment the teacher is offering. It could be in a biology class, they're doing a lab report. It could be an essay on a different theme in their first year composition course. It's very flexible because the teacher is entering their writing assignment and their rubric, and the feedback is customized to that.
Gotcha.
The way I like to think about it is if you already have a peer review workflow established, I mean, this is 5 steps here. It looks a little overwhelming, but honestly, if you're already doing peer review, we should have another infographic that's like the additional step is AI feedback,
Right.
and so if you're already doing peer review, you add AI feedback and you just make sure, I hope that people who are doing peer review already that teachers encourage students, even if they're not using AI, to consider peer feedback. Even prior to AI, I would say, well, what feedback aligns with your goals, makes sense for you? It's about what your purpose is and what you want to accomplish, as well as the assignment. So, that learning how to think about your writing that's a really important part of becoming a more effective writer, is that metacognitive stuff. So this is really about just inserting the AI feedback into that process and assessing all the feedback you get, whether it's human or machine, and making choices. It looks like we're getting some questions in the chat. That's awesome.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Does pair work as a beginning of a unit topic or a summative testing peer understanding in step 2? Yeah, I guess where does it fit within a unit or within curricula?
Carl,
Oh, yeah.
Anna, did you want to answer that really quick and then I can talk about sort of next steps?
Sure. So it fits if you're assigning writing, it fits right after you might ask to do the peer review. You just add in that AI reflection, and that usually could be 20 or to 30 minutes for the student to engage with the AI feedback. And the rest is whatever sequence you usually use. So
So
anywhere you're assigning writing, you could integrate this
yeah,
after they've done the first draft.
yeah. So I would say probably not. Well, yeah, it would depend on, anywhere you have students drafting. Yeah, it's after an early draft. So I think of this more along, this is part of formative feedback because, they're drafting, they're getting feedback. And then, like in my classes, they'll do peer review and AI review, and then they'll go and revise. And then they'll give it to me, and I give further feedback, and then they revise again. Some people, don't have time for that in their classes. I teach specifically writing classes, so it would also depend on the course when how you structure it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I love it. And I love that it's built to work across the curriculum. Just to double click on what you mentioned earlier, like this could be a bio lab that we're writing about. It could be a math, we can do this. We can embed writing across the curriculum. That's a big part of the message that we try to impart to teachers and schools. So, Carl, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I would just say that in many ways, the pair as a unit intervention or a sort of a thin intervention that you can add into any unit really takes you from formative feedback to summative feedback. So you're doing the formative feedback around the peer feedback, around the AI feedback, and then as the revisions happen, that reflection and that final revision you're getting summative feedback at the end from the instructor. So I think to answer the question in chat, PAIRR is sort of foregrounding the formative and the decision making that the student gets between the peer feedback and the AI feedback. But then it also involves that final act of reflection that's the students about what did I accomplish? Which piece of feedback did I use more? Did I combine them? And that's sort of a learning both about what did I produce in this individual essay, but also what do I take with me? I know for myself, when I'm making my final comments on student papers, I'm reading their reflections about what did they use from the peer feedback, what did they use from the AI feedback, and making my own comments so that it's an ongoing conversation. And they're telling me often what I told them either in class or through feedback on drafts. So it's both formative and summative. The other thing that I would just say in terms of thinking about pair sequence is an interesting side note in terms of peer feedback and AI feedback. When we developed the project initially, we felt very strongly that the in-class peer feedback or a peer feedback assignment had to precede the AI because we really wanted to center the human. But there's a flexibility with that. A number of our colleagues in this larger pair project teach asynchronous community college courses, and a number of those faculty have actually flipped the AI and the peer feedback and have students do AI feedback first and then receive the peer feedback because in that asynchronous environment, it lets the peers have something to talk about with each other. And so pair in many ways is a thin intervention that you can use secondary, community college, university level, but you can also adapt some of these steps depending on what works best in your context.
yeah, and I would say I think it's a really interesting idea to use AI feedback um, before human readers. And in the past, like with automated writing evaluation tools that were primarily used with multilingual writers for like language level feedback, that's how they were used, is to prepare students for human feedback. So I think that's interesting as well. And I've had some students who have voluntarily done it that way, and it's kind of increased their confidence to prepare them for human readers.
Awesome. Well, I just want to double click on how much you're emphasizing thinking and reflecting throughout the entire experience. And specifically, you all made the deliberate choice that the students do the drafting on their own with no AI. And then the AI comes in after they do the writing. Can you maybe and this goes to anybody, Annalisa or Carl, can you all jump in and explain like why that choice was made?
Sure. I mean, it's really because we value the writing process as a way students get to develop their thinking. and also their sense of agency and voice and belonging in these conversations, being able to shape their own ideas. Um, and I think you may have heard of, many participants have probably heard about this MIT Media Lab study that showed sort of reduced brain activity among essay writers who were using AI, and the most brain activity among those who were not using it. And that fits with what we understand in writing studies, that writing is a way to help us practice thinking. And also, you have to spend some time with the friction and work through it and try some writing strategies really to get the most out of it. And so having that, a little bit of protected space for that is really important. And even if later down the line in the workplace, they're going to use AI in a hybrid way, um, we want them to have the most thinking practice out of this experience in college.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Oh, go ahead, Lisa. Sorry.
Well, I would just add on too that, AI wasn't developed for education. It's used in workplaces for efficiency, which is very different from learning. And we know that writing helps students process and learn. So we just really don't want to circumvent that through using AI too early in that writing process. And I want to make a plug for Anna's awesome OER textbook, AI in College Writing. I have been using that in my classes, and she really goes through all different ways that like she makes a lot of arguments against AI use in different parts of the writing process. And yeah, I'm gonna go find the link.
I, I think Anna just put it in the chat. Is that the link,
I
Anna?
did. I did. Shameless
And then,
self-promotion.
no, it's not shameless at all. It's awesome work. Right above it, I also put in a link to pair resources that will walk you through that entire structure, but also, and I think critically, will include those readings that have been selected by folks that are doing this. So if you want to do readings on critical AI literacy and engaging with AI, there's some linked in the doc. If you're watching the recording, we will share these links via links in the email. So go to the email and you'll find them there. Okay. Um, I just lost my train of thought entirely. Anything
Oh,
else? Go ahead,
yeah,
Carl.
just one thing, and then I'm sure you'll ask a question. Lisa will tell us about some of the early results from PAIR and that. But the what's interesting in thinking about AI and learning and the writing that students are doing, or some of the resources, is I think pair, like the readings, can be used as a thin intervention and really help students reorient and think about some of these questions, like the cognitive offloading, and do they want to do that or not. And a lot of students are like, oh no, I really care about my own learning. I become invested if I'm giving in a meaningful topic. And I think PAIR lets them use AI feedback to become stronger writers when they make that decision, as opposed to just offloading. So that feels like an important element. Also, really the pair materials in that packet, the fact that they're open educational resources is really important to us. And also Anna's textbook, Anna is super committed to the open educational resource model. And that textbook, I've used it in my upper division writing courses, or pieces of it, really provides useful activities, even outside of the pair model, as sort of a touchstone for teachers and students to talk about where AI fits in their processes.
Yeah, and I love. Can I just say I love how much how much you're willing to share. Like I was working with Bellevue Public Schools, which is here in Nebraska. It's I think fourth or fifth largest district in the state. It's like suburban Omaha. And their secondary ELA department has been working through what do we do with AI and writing instruction. And I know for a fact that Anna, your syllabus was being used to help them think through what should be in their syllabus.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Wow.
so that's the product of open educational resources. So I think it's really cool what you all are doing. And again, for those that are interested, what are we talking about? It's in the chat. We've included links here. I wanted to go back just for a second. Yeah, radical sharing, exactly. Because this came up in the webinar we led with Dylan William. Specifically, I'm thinking through like why not include AI in the drafting process, and the analogy he made that I think would make sense to kids if you're trying to think through explaining this to kids, like because for a surly ninth grader, I can understand why, or even a surly college kid, I can understand why they might be like, hey, I can press this easy button and it'll do it for me in 10 seconds. So why shouldn't I do that? And the analogy that Dylan William made was like, if I go to the gym, I go to the gym to lift weights to get stronger. I'm not going to get stronger if I don't lift the weights. If I go to the gym and I watch a machine lift the weights for me, it defeats the entire purpose of going to the gym, right? So like that's what we're doing. I guess the analogy, if we want to follow that, is like we're going to the gym, we're doing the weightlifting on our own, and then we're using this tool to come in and give us feedback on how well we did the weightlifting, essentially, so we can improve it going forward. I don't know if that analogy very
Yeah,
well, but
absolutely. And the weightlifting too, like not everybody has to be strong, but everybody has to make decisions. And if we want to make our own decisions in life, we want to get better at thinking.
yeah.
And so, that's part of my sense of mission about teaching writing is that this is a way to get better at making decisions about how you understand the world and who you want to be in it and what you want out of life. So to me, it's even more urgent than doing your own weightlifting in a way.
Yeah.
I love that. I love what you just said, Anna. I mean, they're finding that even like medical students who are over relying on AI during medical school to like help with like assessing case studies and things like that. Guess what? When they get out into the workplace, when they're physicians, they're actually worse at clinical decision making. It's like there's so many examples of AI making humans not as good at thinking and doing. And, so I really like that one.
And I just want to say I appreciate how open-minded you are because you're being like we need to be critical of AI, but I also love that your approach is not sort of like shunning it entirely and saying like this thing is evil and out of hand, we should just reject it. It has a lot of downsides, but it also has some upsides. So like how do we grapple with that nuance?
Yeah.
More questions on that soon, but I want to make sure we get to some of the findings because you all have recently published research with the grant that you mentioned and with the huge footprint of schools that you're working with on PAIRR. What were some of the key findings in that study? And I'll direct that question to Lisa.
Yeah. So one of the findings that I already mentioned is that, in our study of 654 students, again, in both writing classes and courses across the curriculum, including STEM, that 75% of the students found that peer and AI feedback was similar, which often built their confidence in, their peers' feedback, actually, as well as in AI feedback. And then when the feedback was different, it was often could be complementary. Like, say, my peers helped me understand. I'm just going to give this as an example, a reader's response, but actually AI can also we have like a reader response, but um, s- and then maybe AI helped me more with structural feedback. Um, and yeah, and I think Anna and Carl, I think, yeah, I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, for sure. And or Carl, any findings from that study that you all want to jump in and share about? Don't feel obligated.
And I'll go so I was just thinking one of the things we found in that study when we thought about students comparing AI feedback to peer feedback, they told us really strongly that the contextual knowledge from their peers of the course and the assignment was really important. And you can think about that, like they would know like how Anna is as a teacher or Lisa or Carl, like you're offering different perspectives. Oh, try to do this differently. And AI isn't going to have access to that. They also liked the authentic audience of someone else sitting in the room, talking with them. We also noticed emotional support and community. And then a fourth interesting thing is that at least in the pilot in 23, 24, the students were really saying, oh, my peers were able to give more specific, deeper feedback. That's been an interesting thing that's changed as we've gotten to 25, 26, and we're working with all these schools. The more specific and deeper feedback we're finding that is we're getting better with prompting the AI, and this is things that are shared through the reader and criterion-based responses in the PAIRR packet, that more specific and deeper deeper feedback isn't always going to the peers, but the peers still maintain that contextual knowledge, the authentic audience, and then the emotional support and community. And so those are sort of interesting things, both from the initial finding, but also the way that PAIRR as a project is iterating and changing and recognizing both the way that the underlying large language models, but also our abilities as teachers and students' ability to prompt and ask for responses are getting better really rapidly over time. It's an amazing space that we're working in.
Yeah, for sure.
I wanted to add one other thing that was important. So we found that the majority of students preferred getting feedback from both peers and AI. Although there was at that point a sizable minority that preferred just peer feedback. This was kind of early on in AI.
Mm.
And I did want to say that only like 6% of students wanted only AI feedback. So there was so they found it really useful, but they did not only want to get AI feedback for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe Anna can talk a little bit about why she thinks they didn't want to, they only wanted, they didn't just want to get AI feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in my department, I think it's really come up for a lot of teachers. They're seeing that students are feeling the value of the peer feedback more and articulating that more. Um, and that's rewarding. That's part of what we want, actually, is for them to have more of a sense of the value of speaking to that human audience, and understand that writing is not just for this product that is then evaluated by some robotic system, but it is to the human audience. Um, and I think that's a benefit, and those two things don't have to be at war with each other. You can be getting some help from the AI feedback, your writing assistants building AI literacy at the same time as you're seeing the and having an increased sense of the value of the human.
Yeah.
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 And,
And oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Lisa.
no,
Sorry.
you go ahead and I'll go after.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything too profound. It's just reiterating what you have already shared, which is like, and we experience this a lot with short answer of like a lot of our activities are as simple as, oh my gosh, I'm going to write something and my classmates are going to see it, and just the fact that my classmates are going to see it makes it inherently engaging and something that I now care more about. And I think that's what's so special about what y'all are building because it's to me, if I had to guess, like the key finding of like ultimately the students preferred having both AI and peer feedback, it's because if you just have AI feedback, you don't have that social joy of like sharing your stuff with other people. You know what I mean?
I
Exactly.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Um, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I was just going to say, on the other hand, peers, it's difficult to provide critical feedback, not just because of like, oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but it takes a lot of experience. Even teachers have a harder time providing that like actionable feedback for students than just saying this looks good, right? So that was something that AI was good at, and that students said, well, what I appreciated is it gave me specific revision suggestions. And we know that students really benefit from specific actionable feedback. And AI was consistently really good at that and also at rubric driven feedback. So you can see why that would work really nicely together with student feedback.
Yeah, you're kind of getting the
So
best of both worlds, right? Because yeah, especially in K-12, there's a when you say peer feedback to K-12 educators, it's like, oh, okay, so the blind leading the blind. Like there's a lot of
Right.
fear. There's a lot of fear. And rightfully so, because a lot of teachers, myself included, have had negative experiences with peer feedback. So it's like, how can you scaffold it in a way that's meaningful? And
Yeah,
at short answer, we've tried to scaffold it as much as possible through comparative judgment of here's two pieces of peer writing, which one's stronger? Oh, you said that one. Tell me why. Like very simple scaffold, but kids can do that at a high level and they're having to analyze a bunch of different worked examples and it's helpful for their thinking in that way. But in your case, which you're it's kind of similar in this, but you're sort of augmenting the peer feedback with the AI feedback. And then the value, I think it seems like for kids is triangulating those two things of like what
exactly.
did they both say the same thing or were they different? You know, I think
Exactly. Exactly. And some people even use the AI feedback to help scaffold peer review. Like, okay, here we've thought about the draft. This is what we think in our peer review group. Let's look at what the AI says and let's talk about that together as a group. But I absolutely agree that, structuring peer review effectively that's like a lifelong process too, right? It's not, we can't just sit, so students have to really have a lot of exposure to the genre, right? We have to look at lots of examples together. I like to develop rubrics with my students, like what makes an effective blog? We're going to spend the whole 2 weeks reading blogs and developing that rubric together, and then we use that rubric to give feedback. So,
Yeah, and a couple things, and then I'll get to the question in the chat, which I appreciate folks putting questions in the chat, and please continue to do so. I put the study that we referenced that on PAIRR that they've recently, I don't remember when that was published, I think just last year, but that's in the chat. And then I also put short answers pedagogy in there specifically because I mentioned comparative judgment. And if you go to that page, it'll walk you through how to use, well, not how to, but just the basics of comparative judgment for peer feedback. He said, speaking of structuring, what question prompts would help younger secondary students provide qualitative feedback? Ooh, that's a tricky one. Does anyone want to take a stab at that?
Well, I think it's important to have like not just sort of students evaluating their peers' writing according to criteria, but also responding authentically as to what is interesting to them, and what they think the other person was saying, what they think they were getting at, and where they wanted more clarity. So tapping into that sense of curiosity and inquiry, and that we can get something meaningful out of this exchange, is really important to me in peer review, even if it doesn't necessarily feed into the criterion-based improvement.
yeah.
And I think that's something younger readers can definitely do.
I absolutely agree with that. And I model to my students, I mean, we've talked about rubrics, but I absolutely model responding as a reader. And I tell them I'm a teacher and I respond as a reader, and we'll look at that. And I think modeling, and doing peer review together is really useful. And absolutely, it's like, oh, I needed it. You were talking about this, but I didn't learn about what that meant until this paragraph over here. So I needed that information earlier, right? Um, uh, Carl, what do you think?
I was actually thinking earlier when you and Adam were talking about sort of the importance of feedback and the difficulty of people providing good peer feedback. I was thinking about one of our colleagues, Marit MacArthur, and I were invited by the American Communication Association, the PR division, to come talk. In fact, here's Marit about AI feedback for a group of people who teach communications, particularly PR. And it was a panel with two communications professors and one person who ran a PR firm. And what Nico, who ran the PR firm, was saying is that feedback in the professional context is one of the hardest things to teach and have people value. And one of the things that he saw, and the other communications professors were using PAIRR in upper division PR communications courses at Washington State, he was like, by practicing this skill in the junior and senior year of college, you're preparing people for the types of having to provide feedback in a professional context, constructive feedback. And he saw that as really, really valuable. So Lisa and Adam, when you were describing how hard it is, whether you're talking middle school, high school, college context, providing feedback is tough, but it's clearly a skill that like professionals in PR are thinking about all the time. How do you talk with clients and get the feedback that you need as a PR professional and then make the adjustments on your writing? And Mart, since you joined, I don't know if you want to add anything from that session.
Was this about like professional applications or like why use AI in a writing classroom? Sorry, which was the question?
We were just thinking about how hard it was to develop good quality peer feedback.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just talking about that with my class that just ended actually. Just sorry about the train. It's a very crucial skill to collaborate well with peers, and I say peer review is modeling for that kind of collaborative writing in the workplace, and it's extremely hard. So I think it's also essential for working with AI, right? Because you have to develop a strong sense of your rhetorical context and evaluate AI output and AI interactions from a position of relative expertise. And if you don't take that step to like recognize your own expertise, recognize your colleagues' expertise, and make sure that human feedback is part of the loop of working with AI, I think, you can make some big mistakes or risk over reliance. So.
Yeah. Mara, thanks for joining. I really appreciate you joining. Even though it's late, it's totally fine. Where are you on a train at?
Just from Davis to Sacramento.
Okay, awesome. In beautiful California. Amazing. Um, okay, I want to jump into the spicy question, or at least in my mind, what is the spicy question? Um, which is, there's a lot of folks, and Anna and I got involved in a Twitter, I don't know what you'd say, mob, about a year ago that I'm happy to talk about. That think AI has absolutely no place in writing instruction writ large. It should be rejected out of hand. Um, have you experienced any pushback on your work in this regard? Um, if so, like how have you responded? Like how would you respond to someone who says like AI has absolutely no place in a writing classroom?
Yeah.
I'll direct that question to maybe Anna first, but then I feel like everybody should feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any direct pushback. We just did a workshop at this writing teachers conference, and there was not one question that pushed us in that way, but we know there's others at the conference who feel that way. Um, I would say that this is something more akin to the internet in that AI is very powerful, very useful, and it's going to be part of many people's work lives. We do offer alternate assignments for students who want to opt out. We are committed to that, and we understand there are ethical concerns. But we feel like it's important for students to learn about it and learn these skeptical habits of mind. And we also think it can help and it can support equity in writing instruction. It can support students who are struggling, and provide an additional support. And so, really, from a pragmatic point of view, we think this is important for students. Um, we need to guide them in relation to AI. We need to be there for these discussions with them and supporting their development in writing and in AI literacy. Um,
Gotcha.
I would just add briefly, just because you haven't heard from me as much, that um, I'm very sympathetic to that perspective, but I think that perspective assumes that you're telling students to use AI to write for them, right? Which obviously we're not. Um, and the conference they're talking about, like, there's a lot of people who are like really thinking about this. So I'm not surprised there isn't pushback from them, but there still is from lots of people across the curriculum who teach writing in some way or who assign writing. Um, but I would say that the writing classroom or classrooms that are maybe a little bit smaller and have some writing assigned is the ideal place to engage this, because you don't have to have like an entire course on AI to assign and discuss a couple of AI literacy readings. And because AI is impacting writing, like that's exactly the place to do it. So I think by not doing it, you risk increasing the AI divide. It's not that everybody needs to use AI for everything, and blue books are completely warranted in a lot of contexts, having them do writing in class. But I think it's a disservice to students, and it's also just unrealistic about where we are. And I don't mean to be like techno-determinist, but AI is all over the place. Students have access to it, and so they can really benefit from the training. If you just have a no AI policy, you're going to get people cheating and like misusing and screwing themselves out of learning.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add there's this sense of kind of relief and excitement that I see in student comments. They didn't know there was a way to use AI that supported their own voice, their own thinking, their own learning, that wasn't taking the place of that. And it's kind of a surprise to them and a revelation. And that keeps me wanting to do it, offering this
Exactly.
other way to approach it.
Exactly. And they're so relieved to be having the discussions too. If you just say no AI and they're going, they're using it anyway, right? Um, But yeah, we've heard from a lot of students who say, well, now I understand how I can use it to support my learning, and it's not the cut and paste way.
Yeah,
Carl,
and
do you want?
oh yeah, go ahead and jump in, Carl, and then I want to share a resource.
Oh, yeah. So I was just going to say, building on what Anna said earlier, is we were all just at the conference on college communication and composition, the 4Cs, which is part of NCTE. And while there wasn't any negative response at our panel and presentation, there was a number of large sessions on AI refusal, which is don't use any AI at all within the conference. And I think developing critical AI usage and allowing students to, I mean, it really is a question of equity. And it's this question of students not understanding when and where and it not being talked about. And I think you have to invite students in. A lot of students themselves also opt out, think about environmental impacts, think about consequences. And part of the PAIR model really does have that. Okay, you can opt out and do an additional peer review, or in the college level, send a student to the writing center to get an additional source of feedback if they don't want to engage with AI. But have them make that as a deliberate choice as opposed to forbidding it or not talking about AI at all. And the tools are going to be out there, whether for a classroom context or job context. I think we have to engage students in a conversation, give them a choice, and also provide scaffolding and guidance so that they recognize the consequences of over-reliance on AI, but they also know how to write with current tools. It would be like in 1994 forbidding students from using spell check and grammar check, and they're always going to be writing in an environment where those tools are available. They've got to think about the actual digital tools that they're going to be using in the academy and in the workplace. And that's part of what we're trying to do with PAIR, is use both the human and the AI, or human and the technology, together and allow students to have the agency and choice on their own.
Yeah, well, I love it. Just to kind of double click on everything you all just said. Marit said, I was talking about AI readings. For those that are maybe just joining, it's like AI readings are in direct reference to the PAIR model that you are creating. And I put a link to the chat where you can find all those great critical kind of AI literacy readings that you could use with your students, because those are awesome resources. And then another thing I wanted to share, and this is amazing work that is being done by a K-12 school district in California, which I think is amazing. It's Laguna Beach USD. And Anna, you had me thinking of it, and Lisa as well, on like the relief of dialogue of like, oh my gosh, we can just talk about, like, my teacher can share their expectations with me, and then I can share with them how I used it, and it's like this starting from a place of truth and trust. And so Laguna Beach USD developed this tool called AI Trust You. It's a very simple tool. It's a free Chrome extension. You wouldn't even need to use the tool to actualize the concept. The concept being AI truth and trust statements of, when I assign a piece of writing to a student, I'm going to share up front how they can and cannot use AI and why I'm setting those expectations. And then as a student, when I submit my writing, I'm going to share an AI truth and trust statement where I explain, did I use AI or did I not? And if I did, how did I use it and why? So that as a teacher, if I'm wondering, like, how did AI influence this student's process, I can go to that truth and trust statement and see, well, what did they tell me first and foremost? If we want to open up a dialogue around usage, could be a really useful tool. So if you're watching the recording this, I'll also link to AI Trust You, because it's a great tool. And I think in line with a lot of what we're talking about here. We've got less than 10 minutes left, so maybe we'll do this one rapid fire. I'm just curious, like, we'll go around the horn. I'll start with Merritt, because we've heard from you the least. In all your work you're doing with PAIR, like, what has surprised you the most? That could be a finding or an experience or anything. But yeah, like, what has surprised you the most in your work?
Yeah, and it's Marit, and I'm gonna have to
Oh,
get
I'm
off
so
the train
sorry.
in a
I'm
couple
so
minutes.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna have to get off the train in a couple minutes, but I will say, this was a pleasant surprise that it can increase students' confidence in their peers. Because when they look at AI and peer feedback together, it's not that the AI feedback isn't useful, but it makes them like be like, oh, my peers are more helpful or smarter, or like more on the ball than I thought. Um, and that's a really
You're fine. You're fine. We can. Why don't we go around? We'll go to maybe somebody else real quick, or if you can finish if they're done with the announcement. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to put you on the edge. Let's go to Anna.
I would just say that was a goal of PAIRR to like kind of sneak in peer review in the back door because it's such an important time to reaffirm that. But yeah, sorry, I have to go. But I'm glad I could join you guys for a little bit.
Of course. Thanks for joining.
I would say it's amazing how insightful sometimes the feedback can be. I was testing it with some famous essays that I assign, like Gloria Ansaldúa and Vershawn Ashanti Young, and it was bringing up some really deep questions that those writers could have used to extend their thinking yet further. And I think it can be both challenging and encouraging at the same time. And so I see that, that's value I've found in AI feedback at times on my own writing. And I appreciate how it can do that. There's sort of this level of depth and this probing challenge. And yet it can also be really affirming of the strengths of the paper and quoting from specifics of the student draft to really show them what their strengths are as well.
Carl, Lisa, surprising finding for you as you've gone through this work?
Sure. I think especially as we've expanded out from UC Davis and we've really been working with PAIRR not only as a curriculum model, but also as a professional development learning model with faculty is the real value of what faculty, teachers, instructors can bring to the PAIRR model and the ways in which the team doing PAIRR has adapted and changed the PAIRR model based on feedback from the faculty that we've been working with. And I would say that's true both within the 8 colleges in California that are working on this, but also through the number of open webinars that we've done. When we've heard back from people, we think about all these things and we really try to center faculty input and choice with how the PAIRR model is developing. So I think that's important. And please feel free to use the open educational resource, the Google packet, but also, make comments on it. We look at those, we make adjustments, and it is getting better over time as we hear from faculty and teachers in all sorts of environments.
So I'll add a surprise finding that shouldn't have been so surprising, but when we set up the AI feedback, we gave students a prompt to use. We developed a prompt in the initial study. And I should say, you shared the study, but since then, AI has gotten better. We were originally using ChatGPT 3.5, which changed to 4.0 in the middle of the study. And our prompting has gotten a lot better. So originally we gave students a prompt to use, and then they put in, what we still do is they also put in the assignment and the rubric. And we gave them the option to ask follow-up questions. So, they gave the prompt, they had the option to ask follow-up questions, but not all of them did. And what we found is that the students who did ask the follow-up questions had a more positive experience, had a better experience. It seemed that they were getting better feedback, which makes absolute sense. It would be more tailored to them if they were asking that. But what we found out in interviews with them is that figuring out how to ask the right kinds of questions actually took some work. It wasn't so easy. Now, that's what I should have been thinking about from the beginning, because of course, in order to ask the right kinds of questions about your writing, that's you learning how to think about your own writing. That's you learning how to think about writing processes. As teachers, we often pose those kinds of questions in the margin for them. So that actually led to our developing some question strategies and question templates that you can find in the OR packet.
Perfect. And yeah, that leads directly into the last question, which you've already answered, which is if a teacher, whether it be K-12, because I do think this is an approach that could translate really well to like a high school or maybe even middle school context. But also if you're in higher ed, no matter your context, like if you're interested in trying out PAIRR, where should folks go? What resources would be most useful?
We just share everything in this Google Doc packet, and you can copy and paste it, and you can adapt it, you can change it, you can reshare it, just give us credit. And one of the things we share there is links to chat bots where you can try out our feedback with your own assignment and rubric. And there's also a chat bot where you can generate a sample essay to try it out with if you don't have permission to use a student essay. And that's on the PlayLab nonprofit platform. So yeah, that's the packet link that Adam just shared. And we would love feedback. You can email us, you can comment on the packet, you can join our Google group to, get updates about public webinars we might be holding, or we have a Substack. So we'd really value input from faculty and teachers beyond our sort of grant project, and hearing how people are adapting our process. So we'd love it if you want to connect with us in that way.
Awesome. Well, I will plan to share that packet. I will plan to share the study we talked about, the Substack, just about anything in this will hopefully be shared in the link that will come out when we share the recording of this. But we're about at time. I just want to say I really appreciate you all taking the time to talk with me this evening and do this for folks, because I think the work that you're doing is amazing. And I know how busy you are because just when you're rattling off the footprint of this study, like you're interacting with a lot of folks and you're incredibly busy, and I know it's hard to find time, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share. And yeah, that concludes the webinar, but I really appreciate you all joining. And all this will be shared in an email, but yeah, I hope this was a valuable use of everyone's time. It was great to
Thank
chat.
you. It was really delightful. And thank you for the great questions from folks in the audience as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a pleasure today.
of course. Of course. Yeah. See you all. See you all.
Okay.